Good day, everyone. Today, we are going to tackle about gender, the male and female differences, gender identity, struggles for gender equity, the cost of sexism and gender discrimination, bridging gender equality to the classroom and beyond. But, first and foremost, I am Abigail S. Quadrillero, and together with Glenn V. Canoy and Jana Carmela Cifra. But, before we proceed, let me first read the objectives. First, explain the physical and socially constructed difference between males and females. Second, differentiate between the expectations of society for the masculinity and femininity, including the influences of religion. Third, discuss the early and current struggles to gain gender equity and provide some specific examples of today's struggles and some of the progress that has been made. Fourth, explain the cost of sexism and gender discrimination to men as well as to women, and how it has affected women in their career choices and ultimately their incomes. Lastly, cite specific examples of how gender equity has been brought into the classroom. So, without further ado, let us all begin the discussion.
First thing, we talk about the male and female differences. As human being, do we know the differences between male and female? We can fairly easily distinguish males and females by their physical appearance alone. Girls tend to have lighter skeletons and different shoulder and pelvic proportion than boys. There are major differences in hormonal level of estrogen and testosterone which control the physical development of two sexes. And if you know the differences in physical structure generally contribute to the male's greater strength, greater endurance for heavy labor, greater ease in running and overarm throwing and lesser ability to float in water. Major differences between male and female gender role. For example, girls or women are generally expected to dress in typically feminine ways and be polite, accommodating, and nurturing. Men are generally expected to be strong, aggressive, and bold. Every society, ethnic group, and culture has been role expectations, but they can be very different from group to group. However, the extent of these physical differences can be also influenced by environment and culture. Are these behavior and choices due to one's being male and female? Do we learn our male and female behaviors through socialization patterns based on sex? Let's begin by looking at what we know about the differences between the two sexes. Differences based on nature. The research on biological differences between the sexes has led to contrasting conclusions about the role of biology after birth in defining female and male differences. According to Elliott 2012, the X and Y chromosomes determine our sex represent a very small proportion of our total gene pool. Male and female share roughly 99.8% of their gene. In spite of these research findings, many parents and educators believe that there are any difference between boys and girls, which can lead to stereotypes and development of different expectations for the behavior, academic achievement, and future occupations. We are learning that the environment has great influence on our behavior. For example, a child grows up in a family that is always swearing. We will notice that the child grows up, he carries the habit of swearing. At one time, it was assumed that men had more intelligence than women due to larger brain size. Today, we know that brain size is related to body size, not to intelligence. Mr. Albert Binet developed the first intelligence level between male and female. socially constructed differences. Although nature determines our sex at the beginning of life, it does not have to limit our abilities to the stereotype rules of male or females. Parents, siblings, teachers, and peers teach individuals from birth throughout life their perception of the meaning of femaleness and maleness. Gender-specific toys and action of girls and boys on the pages of children books and magazines. On the internet, as well as in play with their peers reinforce the gender expectation. Influence of media on perception of gender rules. Television has a socializing influence on children regarding their attitudes toward gender rules. Gender rule stereotypes seen on television are, in turn, reinforced by parents, friends, and school, contributing to the child's sense of what it means to be male or female in society. Children are not immune to the influence of the media. Cartoon characters, children's movies, and toys help determine their gender identities, which are reinforced by their same-sex peers. For example, many preschool girls are enamored with the princess of Disney movie, convincing their parents to purchase the gowns, shoes, jewelry, and makeup of their favorite characters. Not only do they play dress up at home, they dress as princess for preschool and when they attend the Disney movies. Socialization patterns in school. When a child enters school, educators usually continue the socialization patterns initiated by parents that reinforce the stereotype behaviors associated with male and females. The attitudes and value about the appropriate gender rules are embedded in the curriculum of schools. Children are also active participants in the socialization process. Playgroups are often determined by the sex of the children, especially in the elementary and middle grades. Even when the girls and boys play the same game, they often play it differently, with the boys being more aggressive. However, not all boys and girls follow the socially acceptable ways of their gender. Combating gender stereotypes in the classroom. Teachers should consciously ensure that classroom activities do not favor on one group over another. Both boys and girls can learn the skills and attitude that seem to be moral nature to the opposite sex through participating in the preferred activities of the other group. Teachers need to pay attention to the leadership in these small groups and may sometimes have to assign girls to the leadership role to guarantee that both boys and girls are developing the leadership skills. What can teachers do when classroom resources primarily reflect stereotype portrays and perspectives of females and males? They have to identify other resources for their students. The internet may be helpful in identifying role model for students, games for boys and girls to develop skills at which the other sex is generally more adept, and interesting readings that provide different perspective from those in the textbook. Identity. Generally, sex is used to identify an individual as male and female based on biological differences. The differences we observe are based primarily on gender, or the cultural differences between men and women, which define the characteristics behind the meaning of being female or male. These are usually defined as femininity and masculinity, which are culturally determined and learned through socialization. Masculinity and femininity. Most cultures value masculinity over femininity. Masculinity is often measured by a man's independence, assertiveness, leadership, self-reliance, and emotional stability. As a result, men have been bestowed with greater power than women, leading to their being identified by some as the superior sex. Many of us do not fit the stereotypical profile associated with our sex. Many men are empathetic and caring, and many women are tough and assertive. People show the different feminine and masculinity characteristics depending on the circumstances, as shown by recent male presidents and members of Congress who may cry in the times of sadness and yet are tough and assertive when needed. Transgender identity. APA or American Psychological Association suggests that transgender is a term used for persons whose gender identity or behavior does not conform to or is not associated with the sex to which they were assigned at birth. An individual's sex is assigned at birth based on biological status of male and female as determined primarily by physical attributes such as chromosomes and internal and external anatomy. Some individuals are born with the biological trappings of one sex but think and behave like the other sex. For example, a child may be born in boy's body but be a girl in every other aspect of life. When someone's identity, appearance, or behavior falls outside the conventional gender norms and that person's size is described transgender. Influence of ethnicity and religion. The degree to which a student adheres to a traditional gender identity is influenced by the family, ethnicity, class, and religion. In some religion, gender identity and relations are strictly controlled by religion doctrine. For example, like in our religion, it talks only biblically, which the Lord says He could create male and female in Book of Genesis 1 verse 26. Thus, gender inequality takes different forms among different ethnic, class, and religion groups. It is often a struggle to develop an identity that incorporates one's gender, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, class, and religion into a whole with which one feels comfortable and self-assured.
Struggles for gender equity. Women were not regarded equal to men for most of history. In fact, the majority were subservient to men and relied on them for financial support. Jobs for women on their own were scarce and low-paying. Some were no longer permitted to teach when they married. Women with some education may be hired as instructors if they could persuade school officials that they were moral, upstanding young women. During early struggles for gender equity, the desire for independence and equal rights has fired the struggles of women and their male allies for gender equity since the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. During the mid-19th century, women activists were part of the anti-slavery movement. They were also attempting to raise public awareness about women's issues, such as the ability to divorce, own property, speak in public, avoid husband abuse, work, and vote. At the Seneca Falls Convention, women organized to fight against the oppression. This endeavor includes some male allies, notably Frederick Douglass and white abolitionists, fighting against slavery and for all people's human and civil rights. However, at the time, the majority of women did not support the women's movement. They did not consider their circumstances to be harsh and saw their duties as spouses and mothers as natural. Later in the century, protective legislation for women and children was enacted to make some manual jobs inaccessible to women because of the danger involved. The act also regulated the number of hours women could work and the times they could work, similar to today's child labor restrictions. However, such legislation did little to advance women's rights. During this period, the members of women's groups were predominantly European and Americans. They segregated their fight for equal rights from the struggles of other oppressed groups and refused to take a stand against Jim Crow laws and other violations of the civil rights of ethnic and racial groups. It was 50 years after the passage of the 15th Amendment, which granted African American men the right to vote, before women would be granted the right to vote following hard-fought battles that included organizing, picketing, arrest, hunger strikes, and forced feeding in jail. Let us now move on to the second wave. The most comprehensive advances in the status of women were initiated in the 1960s, when feminists were able to gain the support of more women and men than at any other time in history. As in the previous century, this movement arose from African Americans' battle for civil rights. The 1963 Equal Pay Act required that men and women receive equal pay for the same job, but it did not prevent discrimination in hiring. In an attempt to defeat the Civil Rights Bill in Congress, a Southern congressman added the words or sex to Title VII, declaring that discrimination based on race, color, national origin, or sex was prohibited. This legislation, which passed in 1964, extended equal rights to women for the first time. Soon afterward, President Lyndon Johnson signed an executive order that required businesses with federal contracts to hire women and people of color, creating the first affirmative action programs. Women's groups pushed for passage of the Equal Rights Amendment or ERA, which read, "Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." After the ERA was passed by Congress in 1972, conservative groups concerned about family values lobbied state legislatures to reject the amendment. Despite the fact that two-thirds of the American people supported the ERA, it was not ratified by the required number of states. By the 1980s, political leaders were no longer disposed to extend full equal rights to women. The 1990s ushered in a change in the feminist movement toward broader support for the civil rights of all groups rather than just women. For example, the National Organization for Women, or NO, the nation's largest feminist organization, now includes combating racism and promoting welfare reform, immigrant rights, and affirmative action on its agenda. A rising number of essays and books on equity written by contemporary feminists, sociologists, and critical theorists explore the connection of race, gender, and class in the fight for equity for all groups. Moving forward for today's challenges, equal rights for women, men, gays, and lesbians continue to be contested. Feminists fight for equality in jobs, pay, schooling, responsibilities in the home, and the nation's laws. They think that women and men should have the option of working at home or outside the house, having children, and expressing their sexual orientation. They believe that women should not be forced to be subservient to males at home, at business, or in society. They fight to eliminate the physical and mental violence that has resulted from such subordination by providing support groups and shelters for abused women and children, as well as by pressuring the judicial system to outlaw and severely punish such violence. While the movement has been sluggish to emerge, women have begun to find their way in positions of leadership in professional professions. Women have run for President of the United States. The first to do so was Shirley Chisholm in 1972. Geraldine Ferraro and Sarah Palin Hillary, Ronald Clinton, were women interacting with leaders from around the world. As of 2015, there were 20 women serving in the U.S. Senate, a historic high. An additional 84 women were serving in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2015. Even more indicative of change, Nancy Pelosi served as the first and only female Speaker of the House from 2007 to 2011 and was therefore third in line for the presidency. She still served as the House Minority Leader in 2015, according to Pew Research Center 2015. The Boy Crisis. Much has been said in recent years about our school's boy crisis. Some of this has been attributed to feminist school policies that have harmed males. Concerned observers believe that while schools have shifted their priority to increasing the academic achievement of girls, boys have been shortchanged. The backlash is over the belief that there is now an advantage for girls in US classrooms. Under the guise of supporting girls, boys are penalized in classrooms that now favor girls, according to Lindsay 2015. More girls than boys take AP classes and are more likely to complete higher education at all levels, including doctorates. Boys outnumber girls in special education programs for students with intellectual disabilities and significant emotional disorders. More boys are disciplined in schools than females. Girls are less likely to be suspended or expelled. Warner acknowledges that girls indeed take more AP classes, earn higher grades, and earn more college degrees than males. Now, let's talk about the cause of sexism and gender discrimination. Sexism is the belief that males are superior to females. Often, it occurs in personal contexts of marriage and family life where the husband or father rules the roost. It also occurs in the workplace when women have lower status occupations, labor for men, and receive lower compensation than men for the same work. Many individuals assume that in today's culture, men and women are treated equally. However, gender stereotypes might lead to discriminatory conduct based solely on gender. Only a century ago, most women could not attend college and had no legal right to own property or their children. Today, laws protected the rights of women and many people believe that they are treated equally. When it comes to jobs, women continue to be overrepresented in the traditional female occupations, although we are seeing more women entering jobs traditionally held by males, as shown in Table 4.1. However, even though more young women are finishing high school and college than their male peers, they are still not making inroads into many traditional male jobs. The jobs in which women predominant are accompanied by neither high prestige nor high income. People in professional positions, such as teachers and nurses, do not compete in income or prestige with architects and engineers. Women continue to be overrepresented as clerical and service workers and underrepresented as managers and skilled workers. In 2015, however, was selected as the first National Football League or NFL full-time official. Thomas earned her reputation and her way into the coveted position through over 20 years of officiating high school and college football games. Some consider attaining that profession even more difficult than becoming a player. NFL officials must pass extensive physical and psychological testing and must grasp what is considered the most challenging rule book in all major sports. Thomas became the first woman named to such a position in the 90-plus years of the league. Moving forward to income. Historically, men in US society have usually been expected to work. In past years, many women remained in their homes as the primary care providers for their children and homemakers. In more recent years, the higher educational levels of women, the high cost of living, and other factors have seen higher percentages of women in the workforce. Only 16.7% of all married women work outside the home in 1940. By 2012, 59.4% of women were employed, according to Berman 2014. Most of the literature, including speeches by President Obama, suggests that in 2013, women who work full-time in the United States make 78% of the income men are paid. This implies that women must work 60 additional days a year to equal the earnings of men. Pattern 2014 estimates that based on hourly earnings and including both full and part-time workers, the pay differential is in reality closer to 84% in favor of men. The wage gap has narrowed over the years. It was 36% in 1980, but it persists. PO offers some explanation for the gap. Women are more likely to take care of interruptions, including time off to take care of family issues such as children. Women indicate that they have taken significant time off from work or reduced their work hours to provide for their children's needs or other family matters. Even though more women have entered traditionally higher paying, male-dominated professional and managerial positions, as a group, they still tend to work in lower paying occupations. It is possible that the pay differential may also be related to discrimination, as more women 18% report discrimination than do men 10%, according to Pattern 2014. The American Association of University Women, or AAUW, of 2015 found that 1 year after a college graduation, women were making 82% of their similarly educated and experienced male counterparts. In an earlier report, AAUW had found that 10 years after graduation, the gap widened and women were making 69% of what the men were paid, according to Day and Hill 2007. For the final part of the discussion, which is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination that has long existed in the workplace, where women had been recipients of unwanted and unwelcome sexual behavior. In schools, both boys and girls report unwelcome sexual attention. The perpetrator may be in a position of authority and use that power to gain favors or make sexual approaches. In other circumstances, it is a coworker or someone who makes inappropriate advances. Bidwin 2014 indicates that researchers from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, studying 1,400 middle school students in 4 Midwestern middle schools, found that more than 1 in your students, 27% girls and 25% boys, report unwanted verbal or physical sexual harassment on school grounds or violence. Sexual harassment occurs in our schools, hallways, and classrooms, often while other students are watching. Sexual harassment perpetrators include male and female instructors, school administrators, janitors, and coaches, as well as other students. Not just boys harass others. Ladies are also culpable but less frequently. The harassment can be verbal, visual, or physical. In the worst case scenario, the victim is sexually molested or raped. Teachers who give a student better grades in exchange for sexual favors or dates are sexual harassers. If actions by another student or adult are unwelcome by the victim and make him uncomfortable, scared, or confused, they constitute harassment. Sexual harassment can be very damaging to its victims, having an impact on their emotions and subsequent behavior. They may feel self-conscious, embarrassed, afraid, and confused.
Education becomes increasingly vital for upward mobility and financial stability as people become older. Individuals' future living arrangements will be influenced by their career choices. Students' experiences in elementary and secondary schools have a big influence on their chances of pursuing post-secondary education. By the time they reach high school, students have either made selections or been assigned to a track that will influence their chances of attending college. According to the research, there are certain academic success gaps between boys and girls that may be bridged if teachers increase male reading and female math and science performances. However, there is some disagreement over how to achieve this purpose. Some academics feel that teachers should create learning settings that accommodate both male and female learning styles. The Patsy Takimoto Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act, or also known as the Title IX, is a provision of the Federal Education Amendments of 1972 that state that no person in the United States shall be excluded from participation in, denied the benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance on the basis of sex. It was signed into law on June 23, 1972. Although Title IX applies to a wide range of activities, it is most recognized for its impact on athletics, particularly at the college level. In 1974, an amendment to exclude income-generating sports from Title IX coverage was lost, and similar amendments in 1975 and 1977 were also defeated. In 1975, legislation was passed prohibiting sex discrimination in athletics and giving educational institutions 3 years to comply with Title IX requirements. In the 1984 case Grove City versus Bell, opponents of Title IX won a narrow success when the court determined that Title IX only applied to programs that received direct federal funding, reducing the clause's significance to athletics programs. Grove City versus Bell was overturned by the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1988, which stated that Title IX applies to all programs and activities of any educational institution receiving federal financial aid. Beginning in 1996, all coeducational colleges and universities participating in federal student financial aid programs were required to submit annual reports with information about their intercollegiate athletic programs to determine Title IX compliance under the terms of the 1994 Equity in Athletics Disclosure Act. A number of challenges arose as a result of educational institutions' failure to comply with Title IX criteria, culminating in a case before the United States Supreme Court. Each college and university is required under Title IX to have a male-to-female athlete ratio equal to its female-to-male student ratio. Yet, a school can still be in compliance with Title IX if it has a history of growing to attain the correct ratios. Improving academic achievement. Achievement test results for 9 and 13-year-olds have improved since the National Assessment of Educational Progress began testing in 1970, but not for 17 years olds. The issue is that the vast majority of these kids, both male and female, are falling short of their potential on international tests. Students from the United States perform in the middle of the pack of worse. In reality, pupils in most developed nations do better than those in the United States. The primary accomplishment difference in the United States is between white, African American, and Hispanic youngsters, not between boys and girls. Girls are presently engaged at about the same level as males in math and science classes. Girls are more likely than boys to pass advanced academic courses in science and mathematics, but they are less likely to specialize in those courses in college and so work in these sectors, which pay more than typical female occupations. One way to help female pupils is to help them develop the right hemisphere of the brain. As early as preschool, females should be encouraged to construct things. Girls should be encouraged to be more physically active at all levels, particularly through participation in organized sports. Despite their poorer proficiency in math and science, boys outperform girls in reading and language arts examinations. Teachers should discover ways to engage boys in reading and language arts to help level the playing field. Boys may require more phonics assistance than girls. As illustrated by the situation that started this chapter, selecting books that will pick the boys' attention is crucial. Teachers may wish to separate kids into various reading or work groups, as well as provide activities that will pick guys' attention. Other part and music programs that engage boys and girls with words and help them improve their reading abilities may be accessible. Non-sexist education. Its goal is to guarantee that boys and girls in the classroom, in interactions with instructors, and in instructional and extracurricular activities are treated similarly. Teachers must provide books by both female and male writers in order to establish non-sexist classrooms. Males and females with non-stereotypical employment and responsibilities should be presented on bulletin boards and in teacher-prepared materials. Masculine students are required to participate in stereotypically feminine activities, while female students are required to participate in stereotypically masculine activities. Portrayal in curriculum. All students should be educated about the achievements of both men and women throughout history. History schools that focus on wars and political power, on the other hand, tend to favor men. History programs that focus on the family and the arts, on the other hand, are more evenly balanced. The societal hurdles that prevents women from becoming scientists are often overlooked in science features that cover all of history's great scientists. Previously, women scientists and writers were frequently forced to assume male identities or hand up their work to male supervisors, who either published the work under their names or asserted primary authorship. Because the content and concepts that students are taught are completely within the control of the instructors. Incorporating student voices. One purpose of non-sexist education is to ensure that the views and experiences of girls and young women are heard and valued. As girls enter puberty and adopt more feminine features, they become less forceful, allowing males to lead classroom discussions. Young men are seldom encouraged to go outside of the traditional male rule, which comes with its own set of assumptions about what it means to be a man. As they try to follow the norms, they may be depressed and have poor self-esteem. Many students are apprehensive of discussing power dynamics and how they may benefit or lose as a consequence. The value to students and society, on the other hand, outweighs any pain that such discussion may bring students and maybe academics. Students will be able to tackle these challenges and obtain assistance in making sense of them only in the classroom. Interacting with students. According to research, boys and girls are treated differently in the classroom, on the athletic field, in the corridor, and in the counseling office. While instructors may not feel they react differently to boys and girls, they do when they examine their interactions more thoroughly. Teachers should guarantee that female students have an equal voice in the classroom to combat the pervasive problem of males replying to inquiries more frequently. Male and female students should take turns leading activities and dialogues in the classroom. Boys may need support when it comes to reading and writing, but girls and young women may need encouragement when it comes to hands-on activities. Learning together. A teacher may need to set seats and groups to ensure that boys and girls work together in the classroom. The emphasis on power linkages that define competitive behavior is reduced in small, diversified, cooperative work groups. These exercises might be designed to provide all kids a better opportunity, especially those who are typically excluded in the classroom. In order to achieve equity, gender may need to be addressed at times. Educational approaches should be altered, as previously said, to arouse the interest of both girls and boys in the subject. Girls may find cooperative group work, reading, and sitting work more pleasant than boys. Female-oriented resources and boy-oriented materials and items that appeal to both genders should all be included in a broad selection of educational materials. Girls and boys will learn to function in each other's cultural spheres, and teacher will be able to prevent one group from becoming disengaged when only teaching techniques geared toward the other group are employed. Single-sex education. By concentrating on their particular learning styles and cultural experiences, single-sex schools provide a heavy emphasis on building young women's or men's confidence, academic accomplishment, and leadership qualities. Despite the fact that most single-sex schools are for girls, some private schools only have 4 guys. A lot of urban locations have developed schools for young African American men. These schools frequently place a strong emphasis on African American culture in their curricula, with the purpose of instilling self-esteem, academic accomplishment, and leadership in students who are regularly exposed to a hostile environment. According to several studies, females are more likely to enroll in advanced math and science courses in single-gender classrooms. Girls who attend single-gender schools feel more appreciated and supported. Cooperative teaching strategies are more likely to be used by teachers. No one knows. However, if single-sex courses and institutions offer different instruction than co-educational ones, students in single-sex classrooms had better self-esteem than their co-educational counterparts. According to the research, academic achievement and opinions on the subject, on the other hand, were very consistent. Gender equity, a universal issue. In 2015, the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women released their No Ceilings, the Full Participation Report. According to the study, significant progress has been made in the previous 20 years. However, there is much more than that can and must be done to promote gender balance, which will benefit both men and women everywhere. Only a few of the report's highlights are listed here. First, gender equality entails more than simply helping women and girls. Women and girls benefit their whole families when they receive an education. Communities, economies, and society as a whole gain from this. A year of further education may increase a person's earnings by 10%, and women who complete secondary school can contribute to their community's economic growth. Women with a higher education had a lower risk of dying during pregnancy and delivery. Greater female educational attainment, as well as enhanced access to excellent healthcare and information, as well as family planning, were all linked to a large decrease in child death rates throughout the 1970s. Second, women's and girls' health has improved in the last 20 years. Women are living longer and life expectancy has increased by 14% in low-income countries. The quality of drinking water and sanitation has significantly improved during the previous 20 years. However, 25 billion people, on the other hand, do not have access to toilets and defecate in the open. Men, women, and children spend millions of hours a day collecting drinking water, which interferes with their ability to study and attend school. Third is better nutrition and immunization have significantly lowered child mortality rates in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. These rates have dropped by around half. The death rate of pregnant women has decreased by at least 40% in 76 nations during the last 20 years and by 60% in South Asia. These benefits have been aided by increased usage of health services as well as advances in those services. While seeing how far we've come since 1995 is heartening, it's apparent that much more effort is needed to achieve global gender equality for women and girls. Gender equality is a problem that everyone must face. When the lives of women and girls throughout the world improve, everyone benefits.